personally can do as a journalist or as a citizen or as a human being. And I'd be glad to answer any questions, but I should shut up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Roger Weaver from New York City, is that it is a hirer, a major employer of veterans.
Yeah.
Veterans who have been through it, who understand you. It doesn't matter whether they're giving you physical therapy or dealing with your teeth or cleaning the floors. They understand the people who are coming in. I read about a third of the employees in the VA system are veterans.
100,000.
Our veterans.
Great.
Right. No, that's right.
I just had a thought too. If you think of the American Legion, the Veterans of Foreign Wars, all these different groups, we have differences with many of them, and we have seen that. This, in my opinion, is a good shot at commonality. Mm-hmm. I can see us coming together with groups that normally we wouldn't come together with. Yep. What do you think of that? Is that wrong or right?
No, that's right.
That's absolutely right, because we have some gentlemen over here that I was out at Standing Rock with, right there. And we were out there in February, we were out there in December. These gentlemen know that when 4,000 vets came to Standing Rock, it crossed the whole spectrum of Republican, right-wing, left-wing, center, black, white, brown, red, yellow. It surpassed all of the racial, economic, class, political, and we all came together for one thing. And when we came together, right, they pulled the permit. 4,000 vets, December, out there, 43 below in the blizzard. They pulled the permit. They ordered an environmental impact statement, and they pulled the troops and the security forces back 1 mile.
Yes, sir.
1 mile from the front lines, first time, right? That is what reaching across, building bridges can do. And that's what we need to do to save our VA. And that's why we're having this working group is 3 weeks old, guys. And this is 3 weeks old. So we need to work together to form this, make this happen. You know, we don't have anything in common. We got Susan. This is great. She's going to join.
And I'm Veterans for Peace.
And she's Veterans for Peace.
You have a hand.
Yes.
All right.
Wait.
Explain what this new sign-up sheet is for.
Because we signed in when we came
Yeah,
in.
you signed in. Okay.
Is this something different?
No, wait. What is that?
Yeah. Let me.
That's if you want to be on the work group, correct?
In the work group.
Same the VA committee sign-up.
Let me just take 1 second. I'll be right there. Okay. Let me explain this. Okay. We are starting committees, right? We want committees. We want committees. If anybody knows, this is 3 weeks old. We're brand new, right? If anybody knows how to do web pages, put an X by the web pages. Anybody knows how to write, that's good at writing op-eds, press releases, letters to congressmen, put a check by writing. Anybody that is willing to do interviews on talk radio, we have Pacifica people that will call you, interview you, and get you on Pacifica. Anybody that is willing to do talk radio locally or nationally, we'll get them on there. Anybody willing to do press conferences.
Little videos.
Little
short videos.
Little short videos. Put them on Facebook. We got to get this out every way we can.
The CVA is funding town halls all across America bashing the VA.
Right.
They put out these little, narratives, stories on their website and videos on their website, and we need to counter that.
That's right.
We need to be at those meetings in front and giving flyers to people as they go in.
Concerned Veterans for America.
Go ahead.
I just have a question.
Sure.
From anecdotally, my demographic of service, it's obviously different, and I completely agree with you, sir. We have to reach across the aisle and start building bridges. It's imperative. We can't do it alone, existing in our own silos.
Right.
With that being said, are they gonna try and counter what you guys are doing with a different narrative, i.e., 22 veterans a day, and go at an emotional angle. I know that many of my friends from my demographic are very much fed up, and I think we need to plug the younger generation honestly into the older generation, because the health policy analysis and the counter arguments, like, you may wait 2 hours, but you're going to be seen.
Right.
And they don't understand that. And I would imagine that the right's going to come at this with an emotional 22 veterans a day.
Your name, please?
Brandon. And you know, there's Five Finger Death Punch. It's a music band. It's a metal band. They support veterans, and they amplify 22 veterans a day, which is, it needs to be talked about, but it doesn't need to be information that's weaponized in a way that is intended to change the narrative that you guys are doing. You guys are on the right side of history. They're going to try and pull it from you, and I imagine that might be an effective emotional tool to swing your guys' narrative. So I would be prepared for it. We're willing to help with that as well, and make sure you guys own it. Thank you.
Can I address that a little bit?
Yes.
Most of the veterans who are killing themselves are old veterans, people my age who had gotten around to it finally. And most of them are not enrolled in the VA.
Exactly. So that information not being known is changing the perception in my generation, not our generation veterans' minds,
Right.
and it's doing a lot of damage.
And the second thing is that most of the veterans, or the big boys, the American Legion, the VFW, DAV, Paralyzed Veterans of America, and so forth, have a pretty good line. We don't necessarily agree with them at every point, but they don't want to see the VA privatized either. Many of them are concerned about rural veterans being isolated from help, and have bought into the idea that maybe they can get it locally if they can't get close to if they're not close to the VA. But as I think was pointed out today, and in many areas has got to be true, you can't get anything in those little towns. And you're certainly not going to get therapy. You might be able to get your bunions cut, but you're not maybe. So there are those kinds of issues. And another thing that was not mentioned today, it was mentioned that the VA has to be accountable, the private sector doesn't, and that's a key thing. That it is true that the private hospitals have the same damn problems, and if you follow the lawsuits, they get sued as much as the VA gets exposed. And the last point I'd like to make is the VA cannot advertise on its own behalf. It's a government agency. So I'm driving through the Bay Area listening to KCBS, and they had these sob stories about Marin Health Center, and I got my heart fixed, and I got new knees, and it's my healing place, and that's an advertisement for a private health provider. Well, the VA cannot do that. They had no budget for it, and they were forbidden by law from doing that. So it's going to be our job to advertise for the VA.
Yes, absolutely.
It's a big piece of our job.
So Brennan, would you be willing to work with some of us, like me even?
Absolutely.
With your younger demographic, to think about what are the stories, what are the mechanisms? I mean, we could start a little working group.
Absolutely.
Because
my recommendation is you break it up by demographics and by age, and you begin to analyze that. And when you begin to understand the younger generation's culture, you will be able to reach them. Obviously, you start with credibility. People that have it, and Veteran Service Corps has that kind of credibility with the younger generation, and we will gladly push that angle, because it cannot become privatized. Absolutely not.
So be sure and fill out the committee thing if you wouldn't mind.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And sign in.
My honor. So thank you.
Well, thank you guys. I think everybody. Yes.
I'd like to comment too on what you said about it being a unifying. My name is nurses there in the beginning, and then when we had veterans who couldn't get there, we spent over $50,000 on buses. So we had our nurses on the ground before the public even knew about it, because such un-American things were happening, like under Obama's watch. And so we had our nurses on the ground. So we collaborate. Something I think of that's unifying on this issue, and which is very important to NNU, and I think to young people too, because you work differently than some of us old trade unionists who had great insurance. A lot of young people don't have great health insurance. And so the unifying piece is too, dismantling the VA is dismantling the most successful single-payer system, so that if they improve VA, and what you talked about with the bill, there's got to be a way, or whoever asked the question, there's got to be a way we can have single payer and a great VA.
Right.
So the unifier piece, you know, there is to make sure that, right, and like Susan, who I'm not a veteran, you know, I have a lot of vets in my family, we look at it as part of a national piece because you deserve it.